And it all came to a head. I was reading a book by Chomsky, Cartesian Linguistics, and there was a reference to Juan Duarte in a footnote. Juan Duarte is the author of El examen de los ingenios, 16th century work, and he was one of the people I was studying. But Chomsky was fascinated by Duarte's creativity and these ingenios creativos, these creative wits, who could say things that they're not heard from anywhere else, but they were creative individuals, and I could see the attraction of that for Chomsky, his deep structures, Duarte. But as I read the Examen de Ingenios, there was a lot. Most of it was medieval medicine, talking about the humours and about blood and fire and what have you. And I thought, well, Chomsky doesn't mention that at all. But how am I going to explain this seeming materialism? And of course I tried to use Bloomfield, which is a sort of empiricist subject, and Chomsky's Kantian subject. And looking back now, what did they have to do with Duarte? Well, nothing.
Sorry, they were actually against each other, no? Those two subjects.
They were. You see, they were fighting within British,
right,
within bourgeois culture. Duarte had nothing to do with that. And Chomsky was saying, we must read Duarte because he helps us understand what came later. No. To understand Duarte, you have to understand what came before. It was the past that was pressing him. Feudal substantialism, as Juan Carlos would say, then of course mixed with animism, which would explain these creative subjects. So Duarte's text was a contradictory text. So you had feudal ideologies and emergent bourgeois ideologies. That had nothing to do with Bloomfield or Chomsky. So, what was I to do with that? Oh, I did a book on Duarte, but of course, it was a blind alley. My next book, what had happened in my next book actually was, which was The Birth and Death of Language. I'd become an Hegelian. So from being an empiricist, I actually shifted over. This was all going on unconsciously. I'm not saying I read Hegel, but you see, I was trying to feel my way towards a new way of looking about it, thinking about this. And I wrote a book, and I had chapters on the Cid, the Buen Amor, Telesquino, mysticism, Don Quixote. But just to give you an example, as regards the Libro de Buen Amor, I focused on the line when the Cid's going into exile, and he cries through his eyes, and crying through his eyes. Yeah, the Cid, crying through his eyes. And my view of it was that the juglar, the poet, had an inner world, but he couldn't explain this private world. He had to exteriorize it in some way, turn it into to make it a public world, from the private to the public. Oh, no, that is not. When I read Juan Carlos, I realized that division only happens under absolutism. It did not exist under feudalism. So I was bringing bourgeois concepts, the division between the public and private, and trying to plant them on top of a feudal text. It wasn't working. But that book of mine caused a certain amount of panic in British Hispanism, because I've moved from being an empiricist to being an Hegelian, you see. They didn't think of it like that, but they realised that we have a problem, We have a problem with this young man.